be talking about cutting the cord. And by cord, we mean cable TV. Alternatives. In the beginning, we did a little chatting, and I heard some numbers that people are paying, which I couldn't believe it's even that high. We're very lucky to have Chuck Nilosek with us. Chuck has a company called Cut the Cord New England. Chuck is, so I'm going off script here a little bit. Chuck's a great guy. He's from the Plymouth area. He really does a lot for the community, has this company helping people cut the cord. He's actually helped people save over $2 million since 2019. I'd love to know where some of that money went, what that was spent on. But he's going to teach us how we can watch, what are the options? How can we watch some of the content? Just know to go right to cable. There's so many possibilities, so many places to start. He's going to kind of help guide us down a path, give us the options for canceling cable. He's got a lifelong career in media. He actually owns his own streaming channel. So this is, if anyone can tell us how to do this, it would be Chuck. So Chuck, good morning, hello, and thank you.
Hey, Dale, thank you. I appreciate you having me on. And, I think that we're going to have a good time here. It's hard really to know exactly with the level of knowledge that everyone's coming in at this with. So what I'm going to try to do is be somewhat of a 10,000 foot perspective and kind of cover some stuff, and then we'll do some questions at the end. Can you see me okay, Dale? Is everyone?
Yeah, you look great.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. I need that constant affirmation that I look great, and you said all those nice words. So anyway, as Dale said, I have a lifelong background in media, master's degree from BU in television and film and marketing, and cord cutting is just sort of the natural progression of where everything is headed. And I would love to share my screen, because what I want to do is, I have some slides that we can kind of take a look at here. So, if you would indulge me, we'll put this up there, share my screen, and let's see here. Everyone can see, and we'll get the thing going right here. So for the most part, my time was spent, working for places like the NBA, National Basketball Association, Nesson here in Boston with the Boston Red Sox. I worked at HBO in Los Angeles. And then, as time went on, doing a lot of independent stuff. But, I really want to discuss this new transition that we're going into, which is cord cutting, and how it can help you and your business both at the same time. And so from this meeting, what I'll try to do, and we'll fly through this, because I do this presentation all over the place for individuals, on a one-on-one basis, for businesses, for groups like this, and then groups in person. But we're going to talk about the money saving aspect. We're going to talk about basically dispelling the myths. I'll talk about devices and technology and all that kind of stuff. And, really what we'll do is sort of cover, like I said, everything from a 10,000 foot perspective. And then hopefully at the end, you'll feel confident in being able to enter the future ready world of media. Now, I certainly can blow your mind and waste a lot of your time with stats. This is probably one of the parts that, I feel is a little bit, like you could spend so much time, and obviously on the screen here, that this was, you can't keep up with the numbers reflecting how many people are getting rid of cable TV and heading to the world of streaming, because it just is a hockey stick straight up graph. And that tells us a lot. It really tells us how that trend is, which, by the way, isn't sort of a fad. It's a trend that is being dictated by Amazon and Google and Roku, Apple, all these groups. So this isn't just the these startups. These are groups that are leading the charge in the world economy. So I could go through these stats all day long, but I think for what I really want to talk about is the aha moment that for me was when my daughter was we were in orientation for her at school. And she's graduated nursing school from Curry College, and she is a full-time nurse at South Shore Hospital, where she's getting married in June. Super proud of her, but and that this time flies by like way too quickly. But 6 years ago, during orientation, the school had mentioned that, hey, we no longer have cable in the dorms. We only have internet, and we recommend that you get a Apple TV or a Roku device or an Amazon Fire Stick, and we sell them in the bookstore. And being in media, I had already knew most of this vocabulary, but it really hit me to be like, wow, this is sort of an institutional recommendation. And it started to affect me a little bit more, because I'm thinking these are all the prime demographics. These are the kids that are graduating with a college degree, that are in that sweet spot for advertisers. They're not going to graduate from school and call the cable guy and have some stranger coming over wiring their house. They're going to take their Rokus out of their dorm rooms that they're watching everything on already, and then they're going to plug it into their new apartment in Alston or Braintree or wherever they're living, and that's going to be the trend. And so I started to look at this from the standpoint of all the other colleges that are out there, and it was astounding, just the direction that this was heading in. This was obviously, going back 6 years now, going to be the trend. Now, why do I do cord cutting? Because it's sort of a weird thing. It is really like if I was a car manufacturer and had to also set up a driver's ed school, if that makes sense. Because my main thing is media, and I run a streaming network called Plymouth Rock TV, and we're in 53 million homes all over the world. We're like Netflix for New England. So we have movies, documentaries, TV shows. We do live events. We do so much, and I'll talk a little bit more about that towards the end, and how that can, sort of play into what you're trying to accomplish. But nevertheless, my biggest fan, is my mom, right? And she lives in Pocasset, and she would be telling people, you got to check out my son's platform. He's got this thing on the streaming channels or whatever. And so it became like I would have to explain to people who didn't know about streaming. And I would say, well, how people aren't paying for cable anymore. And I would see people's heads literally explode. And it was occurring to me that there was a lot of people who just didn't know you don't know what you don't know. You don't know the alternatives. So because my mom wanted to brag about her son and what he was doing, it became somewhat of a overwhelming start, because I would get calls from all of her friends and everybody that, that knew of what we were doing. And they would say, I hear you know how to, stop paying for cable. And it turned into a little bit of like, I had this secret, which I thought, I don't really, I'm not telling anybody anything that they couldn't find on their own. But what I think that the Cord Cutting New England was set up to do was to really just help educate people. Because if I wanted folks to be able to check out Plymouth Rock TV and where we exist, it was going to be important that people knew how to stream. At the same time, on average, people were saving $150 to $170 a month with streaming. And the important part was that there is nothing on cable TV that you miss out on with streaming, which is, I think the thing I tell people to tattoo on their arms, because that is really a huge myth that somehow cord cutting means you're cutting back or you're disconnecting from society and all that kind of stuff. And it's just not the case. So when I would do these workshops, I would do them online, but most of the time people would call me up and invite me over to their homes. And, it's hard to do these meetings as well as do, everything that I'm up to with businesses and with Plymouth Rock TV and all this stuff. But basically what we would do is just offer a beginner's guide to cord cutting, what it means, and what we're talking about specifically. And again, I could blow your minds and bore you with statistics, but people are cutting the cord so dramatically that it is really reshaping everything that we know about media. So from a personal perspective, this is something that's happening whether or not you are listening to me or want to talk to me privately or do this on your own. This is happening anyway. It's just a matter of maybe getting out in front of it and taking the opportunity to save money. And secondly, being future ready is very, very helpful in understanding how the media will play a role in your business. I imagine a lot of you on this meeting are business professionals. You're forward thinkers. You came on this because you thought, well, this could be something that could be great in my house, but it also could be something that I could use to help my business out. So that's really, the crux of what we're trying to talk about today. And, again, when I talk to investors and I talk to, retirees and I talk to people who are television producers, it really comes down to the same thing. And, again, I run the risk of having too much data here, but like these numbers, it was kind of laughing yesterday when I was going through all of these numbers this was like a year that I put this slide together. And, it says OTT, which is an acronym that stands for over the top. So you'll hear a lot of that in the technology world, that over the top means that people are getting media by sort of jumping over the hurdle of cable. So that's what that means. And, it says that viewers are expected to increase to 209.3 million in 2020. And what this slide didn't take into account was COVID, because COVID really amped up the whole switch and the whole migration away from cable TV, over to streaming. And, and back to that aha moment that I had, just think to yourself, if this is all foreign and new to you, ask yourself, just do the eyeball test. Where do you see most of the people watching content? What are the more popular, networks that are out there, like Netflix and Hulu and Disney Plus? Those are all streaming networks that you can access without the help of Comcast or cable. So that's kind of interesting. And we, pretty much, find that these typically are the main reasons why people would cut the cord and why they would reach out to us. Save money is the first. I'll get into that a little bit. They want to control their TV experience. I think that is, a big deal, as people, I would say streaming is allowing folks to have more of a niche programming lineup in front of them, where you control the types of things that you're interested in. So I'm going to talk to you and answer questions about how to get all your local news channels and get everything that you would need through cable TV. I'm going to show that from a practical standpoint in a minute. But I think the important thing is to understand is that what news is and what the definition of all of these vocabulary terms is really up to you. And news, in my mind, I've been really, as somebody who has majored in journalism and worked at my first job out of college was Chronicle at Channel 5. I had a huge, admiration and love for that industry. It is slowly eroded, where I find that most of the media that we're exposed to is poisonous. It is negative. And if you want to watch local news and find out who was killed, raped, or murdered, that's great, but that doesn't mean that that's news to everyone else. And so Plymouth Rock TV was set up as a platform to be sort of a what's up of, the things going on around you and in the community. And I think news is, who's going to be playing at the Cape Cod, Melody tent, or who's going to be, what trails are open at mountains, what kind of weather do we have coming in, what is the great white shark situation, on the Cape. There are so many things that are related to what individuals feel as news, but you cultivate and create your own experience there. Also controlling the TV experience, when you're cutting the cord and you use a Roku device or an Apple TV device, Apple TV, not so much, Amazon Fire Sticks and Roku, you buy them, they're pretty cheap. You get them at Walmart or Best Buy or Home Depot. They sell them at CVS. You get them on, everywhere. You buy it once, and then you're not paying a lease agreement. You're not paying taxes and insurance on it. There's no long-term contracts, no credit checks. It's a pretty sort of independently operated situation. And I think that what people like the most about it is that it's less of a fear. Somehow people think when you cut the cord, again, it sounds so dramatic. And, we've never physically cut any cords with shears or anything like. As a matter of fact, a funny story about cord cutting was that my daughter had been reached out to by a friend from high school who I coached in basketball. And she says, "What is this business your dad's doing with umbilical cords and babies?" And I'm like, my daughter's telling me this and I'm laughing because the cord cutting, we all know cutting the cord more. If you Google that expression, you'll get psychology websites on how to, either release control of your mom in your life or how to let your kids go off and do things. It's a very strange term that is used, but nevertheless, when people cut the cord, they think somehow that it's a permanent situation. It is permanent in the sense that I've never had anybody go back to cable, but the cable companies will always welcome you back. If you canceled your service and then wanted to get it 3 weeks later, you're welcome to go back, but people just don't do that. The other side of things is that streaming offers a wider variety of content, and I think this could be both a good and a bad thing. I use if you had a bookmobile, everyone remembers bookmobiles back in the day. I'm dating myself here, but a bookmobile would show up and, it would be nice and convenient, show up on your street and you can go check out a book. And if that bookmobile had all the books that you were interested in that bookmobile, that's a great bookmobile. But if it didn't, the choice and the variety wouldn't be too good. So the alternative would be something like the Library of Congress, which has every single book ever written, every bit of written material there. But the amount of content that's there can be overwhelming. So in one respect, you have this huge open forum of media through streaming, and sometimes people like that confinement of cable. But when it comes down to what you're paying for it, it really is, it doesn't make much sense when you can have just about, 100 times, and there's no real number that I can think of that really computes to how much more content there is with streaming. So nevertheless, and, these streaming devices are pretty inexpensive. There's all different kinds of streaming devices that are out there, Roku, Apple TV. Just this little screenshot is just the different types that you'll see at Walmart, and they're different prices. And so admittedly, a simple thing like cutting the cord and streaming, which I think can be figured out by just about anybody, does have a lot of technology that you would ask yourself, well, what's the difference between this Roku Ultra LT and the Roku streaming stick and Roku Premiere and what have you? And I'm trying to explain to folks that, it is, there's not many of me out there, I picked an interesting sort of field to sort of tackle the education component, but a lot of folks are going to be left on their own to sort of figure that stuff out. There's not a lot of folks like me to help explain it. So I feel the value of the cord cutting experience with me and what I'm doing is that we block off time and we focus on it, and you're getting a custom designed explanation that fits what you're trying to do. So you can skip over a lot of the unnecessary promotional items or things that you don't need. And, a lot of people will attempt to cut the cord on their own by going down, buying the most expensive device, trying to hook it up to their TV, which is not very complicated. And then they get weighed down with all of these things that you could have probably skipped with me in your presence. And then you're like, oh, to hell with it. I'm just going to stick with cable. And then you continue paying for cable. That's not what you want. So,
Hey, Chuck.
Yes,
Can I just interrupt you 1 second? We've got a lot of questions here. A lot of how-to questions. I don't know if we should address them now or if we'll get to them during the presentation. Like a lot of specific questions about the devices and phones
sure.
and whatnot. Is this a good place to stop or?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
And I'm trying to see the questions. I guess I got to stop the share of my screen here.
that's okay. I'll take
Or
care
do
of
you want to
them.
ask me?
Yeah, I'll ask you.
Okay.
So there's a lot of questions about, the specifics. Like, oh, my chat just disappeared. Where'd it go? Boy, Zoom is a little fussy today. So I think there's questions about the specific devices, but one of them is, for example, can Roku be installed? Can it be installed on a TV? Susan asked. I don't know if I'm asking that question correctly, but Roku is a device, right, that you can buy. But I think Susan's question is also, maybe Susan, are you asking because there are some TVs that have it pre-installed on it as like
Right. My
so
sister
I'll answer.
pre-installed.
Yep.
so
And I've
is your
heard every
que-
question that can be possibly conjured up, and this one is a common one, and I can answer it like this. And if I'm wrong, just interrupt me. But because streaming is taking an internet signal, right? That's really, if we think of everything like we think of how our iPhones or iPads work, everything is coming from a wireless signal. So TVs are built now, and you hear this expression, a smart TV, or you could have a smart refrigerator, a smart toaster. You could have all these smart devices in your home. And what smart means is that it can accept a internet signal, a wireless signal. It doesn't have any, you have a smart printer. It has nothing to do with the intelligence, or it didn't, that the TV didn't take the SATs or anything, or an IQ test. It is just sort of a crazy term. So what a Roku does is it actually makes your device smarter, if you want to put it that way, and it sort of converts the streaming experience to somewhat of a familiar experience through your TV at home. So when you turn on your TV, if you were to just have your phone plugged into your TV, which you can do, and people probably have tried to do that, that's not a smooth viewing experience that you and your family will sit down and you want to channel surf or watch things, or that kind of thing. So a lot of people's experience with streaming is, yes, you have cable, and then somehow cable convinced you to keep them and still have like Netflix and all those things through the cable. You don't need that. And actually, one of my business partners, I was just talking to him last night, even he didn't know. He's like, well, I'm going to get rid of cable as soon as this sports season that he was interested in is over, because he watches it on Peacock. And I go, Joe, we're watching Peacock in the other room right now. I haven't had cable in 5 years. So it's more of like the device goes to your TV. It helps you view content like you would in a comfortable environment of your living room and on big screens, that kind of thing. And it is also a great hub to be able to control all of your subscriptions, because right now the world of this includes, like, maybe if you had a subscription to Netflix or Hulu or Disney Plus or something like that, over time there's going to be more and more of that. So if you have a couple subscriptions now, down the road you might have a lot more. So the Roku device, even on a smart TV, makes a lot of sense to have. Now Roku is making Roku TVs, which are basically one of the hotter items that are out there, which is basically a small Roku device with a TV around it, so those are super neat. I didn't need one, but I got one because, our TV over the summer, pooped out, and then my birthday was in July and my kids bought me one, and I was like, oh, this is pretty neat. So does that answer your question a little bit? Yeah.
We'll assume so, unless
Okay.
Susan, if not, you can write something in the chat again. Eric has a question. Do you need to buy a separate Roku Firestick for each TV in the house?
Yes. Yep. And, and part of the process is baby steps. And this is where not that I'm selling my service or anything, because that's technically not what, I'm not doing this professionally as like we're trying to fill up our schedule with folks. But, when we come and when I sit down individually with people, I bring a Roku as part of the process. It's included in the cost. And I actually will use that. The Roku is the easiest for beginners. It's also the most popular device. But, I'll get calls from people that'll say, hey, I have 9 TVs in the house. And I'll say, well, let's take baby steps. Let's just see if this even makes sense to you right now. And, if in fact people want more Rokus, we do have them that we can offer, but I'll generally, they're a little bit more expensive from me than they would be if you went to the store and got them. But again, going back, a lot of folks might not know which ones to get. We have a little shed outside next to our pool that I converted to like a bar, man cave kind of thing. And we have a Roku hooked up there that is a different device than what we'd use in the house, because that specific device, its main function is to attract a Wi-Fi signal that might be weaker because it's further away from our modem. So that will be a different device than the one I'll have in my office or that we have in our living room. So yeah, I go through that with everybody. But on the low end, they cost $35, $40. On the high end, they're about $100, and so they're pretty portable too. You could unplug it from your living room and bring it upstairs to your bedroom if that was the case. But, again, it's a one-time cost, and then you're never having to pay that cable bill again.
Okay, great. Next question. Are there compatibility issues with if you have a Roku installed and you want to get Apple TV, can these multiple devices work together, or are there some known issues?
No, believe it or not, it's actually less of a problem than you would expect, because Apple makes things very difficult generally if you try to do anything outside of their fruit bowl. The Roku actually, I have, again, as you can imagine, for me being in this world, I have an Amazon Fire Stick, I have an Apple TV, I have the Roku devices, I have all of them. I'm testing them, I'm trying them out. It's sort of a, experimental thing. But as a individual who just wants to sit down and watch TV, in my family, everybody uses Roku. We have an Apple TV account. There's an Apple TV app that's right on our Roku. It makes no sense for us to even use our Apple TV device, because and first of all, Apple TV's devices are expensive, and if you have one already, that's great. But one of the problems is that it is so expensive, and they require so many upgrades and everything else, that when people have them, if you're going to climb down the ladder and climb back up the ladder, you might as well climb the ladder that includes like a Roku or an Amazon Fire Stick, because it's a cheaper device. But yeah, they're very compatible. And we watch shows like the morning show with Steve Carell and Jennifer Aniston on Apple TV. They have a lot of great programming, and we do that all from our Roku.
Okay, so I think that's great. So I think, John, you correct me if I'm wrong, Chuck, because I don't know as much as you do, but basically, if you had a Roku and you had an Apple TV piece of hardware, they both connect to the internet independently, just like two laptops connect. And then they have inputs separately that go into inputs in the TV. So it's just like, well, there's probably not a lot of Xbox players here, but you actually change the TV to say, I want to look at what Roku is bringing to my TV, and then you have a button to change the input to say what the Apple is going. They don't actually like sit and work together.
And I'll just make it succinct and quick, is that just as though when you had your TV with a VCR, a DVD player, and whatever you else might have hooked into your TV has multiple inputs that allow you to do multiple things. So, some people who do have their Apple TVs because they want to access Apple content from their computers, you can switch inputs over. And, I think generally speaking, that gets a little bit into the weeds and the technology. Short run of it is that compatibility, yes, it's very compatible. And technology improvements and the way everything is headed is supposed to be, we live in a capitalist world where the new products that come out are supposed to make our lives easier. They're addressing all the older problems. So there's, again, one of the myths is that somehow this is more complicated than it was before. I would say that any new behavior might be somewhat of an adjustment, but at the end of the day, as evidenced by most of the people that I talk to who call themselves, technologically illiterate, they find this to be, once they get, sort of used to it, and they're far more used to it than they would think. They find it a lot more easier and streamlined.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. We've got like 10 more questions. Probably should have just scrapped the presentation and just go with the questions, but
well, if I could show just another example here, because I think sometimes seeing is believing, and
Sure.
I'll share my screen here, and I've got
I don't want to go ahead.
I have you're going to see my phone come up now. Again, even though this is like like an example of like a Roku device, right? Like this is just my phone. So if I were to go and open up many of these applications, as you can see, there's Plymouth Rock TV. And if I were to click on that, these are apps for your phone and whatever else. But what people don't realize, and I can explain, that in a minute, but like, where the technology is going now is a group like this, like Local Now. Like Local Now is a platform that is designed to, I'm going to turn the volume down here, but it's owned by they bought the Weather Channel. And when you go on,
we have a little bit of
and I'm
fog out
just going
there
to
this
mute
morning
this,
across the region. That will lift. We'll see some sunshine in between
here,
partly
just
cloudy
mute it.
skies.
When you go on to this on your television set, it is now giving you a lineup of content that is going to be specifically about where you're from. So in this particular app, what they're doing is that they have channels. So this is all free cable, right? So as you can see, the top three are Local Now Boston, Fox 25, and then there we are at Plymouth Rock TV. So if I were to hit Plymouth Rock TV, we're carried by 53 million homes from what's called fast networks like this. And they're basically, what's called free ad supported TV. And, as you flip through and, as I go through on the different channels here, it might be, let's see here. You can see that they're going to have hundreds of channels. There'll be local channels from all over the world. And, it's just one of those things where you're constantly able to, get information and TV shows around your area. There's, you can see on my screen, like Peacock. There is, and I can show you News On, which is basically all your local news channels. Now, this looks different on a mobile app than it does with your television at home, but this is sort of, it helps explain like how people think that they're going to miss out on something, like, oh, how am I going to watch the Patriots or something like that, that kind of thing. And we kind of go through that. So it really is it's a streamlined scenario in which people can, really get so much more without paying the amount of money that, and everything I showed you, by the way, is free, so that's one little part. So maybe you can go on to another question, and as people see these things, they can.
Yeah, there's a lot of there's a handful of questions about internet costs. How can you decrease that? I don't know if that's not really in scope of what we're talking about today, but I will ask you. I don't know if we really have a lot of options out of that.
Well, we do. I can give you that. I can give you that answer. Number one, that's the thing that everyone has to understand, is that the internet is the main component of streaming. And so on the Cape, as you know, the perception is that you only have Comcast, and somewhat to a degree that's the case. But what COVID did was it opened up a lot of or exposed a lot of the problems of having a monopolized system like that. If you're going to force people to work from home and take schooling from home, you can't have a situation where there's going to be price gouging or one option where your neighbor is going to have really good, clear Zoom ability, and then the other house isn't going to be equipped enough to let the kids log on to their classrooms, that kind of thing. But the internet community is growing leaps and bounds. And just to kind of give you an example, 5 years ago at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, I was there. The amount of stuff that was there about how new internet companies would blow your mind. And the reason that we're not seeing them is more because of bureaucracies and contracts and municipalities and bribes and all that stuff. And literally, it's no joke. And we're seeing there's going to be a lot more of control out there. One of the good examples that has popped up in the last couple of months, Starlink, which is owned by Elon Musk. They've been around since 2020. It's 100 times faster than any other internet service that's out there. The cost is supposed to be, they're supposed to have this be set up so it would be like $30 a month. They want to give universal access to internet to all of the Northern Hemisphere. And then COVID got in the way. But that's what, when Elon Musk was launching rockets up into space, they have about 500 low orbit satellites that were put there to give us internet service, right? So we think that internet is only going to be through our computers, but it's going to be dish related. It'll be satellite. And right now you can get a Starlink dish, and it's about $500, and the service is about $99 a month, and it's in that beta test form. And if you're in the mountains of Wyoming and you're in the White Mountains of New Hampshire, that might be a really good opportunity or good option. But right now, if you're just looking at it from a cost perspective, it probably isn't the right way to go. Elon Musk granted Starlink access to all of the Ukraine, to sort of open up more informational freedom over there. And so that is sort of the big picture of it. Now, again, we can expect to see a lot of changes in the next handful of months and years. And I am on top of all those things because this is my industry. And I also have some proprietary strategies on how to deal with your current internet company to be able to get the best rate possible and to get the best deal possible. So that's stuff that I don't let out there, because unless I'm talking with an individual, because it's not necessarily proprietary as much as it all is about, hey, look, we know the secrets, we know what you're, the things that you're not telling everybody else. So yeah, there's a lot of things to consider when it comes to the internet and advice. But that will always be something, whether it's streaming or not, that it will be an expense in your world.
Okay, great. Jeff, I'm reading a comment here. Jeff had his hand up at one point. I apologize, I didn't see that. If you have a question or you'd like to speak, Jeff, please let us know.
Yes, Jeff's up. Is now a good time?
Great.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So I mean, actually, fundamentally, the first thing we need to address in a systematic way, right, is internet. And then most people want to have Wi-Fi, right? So generally speaking, and I've tried to cut the cord and I found it to be really chunky, and been doing it for years, and I still have found it chunky. But bottom line, though, cost perspective, just to get the internet and of course your Wi-Fi is about $100 a month. Now you just mentioned you have an ability, proprietary way in which to get it at lower cost. What is the lower cost without even telling us that? Is it $30? Is it $50? What is that? And I have a follow-up.
Sure. And let me back up. Let me back up a little bit to say, Jeff, you're a good example of somebody who is like forward thinker, like an early adopter on the concept. I come across a lot of people where they've attempted streaming in the past and they found it to be, like you said, clunky or whatever else. There's a lot of factors that are coming together that make streaming not only better than cable as far as the perspective of the experience itself, but it is just more efficient. It is, there's just every check mark in the category of better, falls in the line of streaming. I'm not here from the streaming council. I'm just here from a technologically, as a technological observer and somebody who is trying to make the most of what's out there currently. As far as your question about the internet goes, is that, it varies from person to person in terms of like what your monthly expense might be based on the size of your home, what your objectives are, in terms of like internet will be more, you have more of a strain on your internet when you're doing things like Zoom calls or uploading content, video, or if you're doing gaming, interactive gaming, or if you need real-time access to, say, a financial server like the New York Stock Exchange, you buy and sell, that kind of thing. As far as streaming goes, and to the television side of it, it's very, it has very little impact on your internet bandwidth, because what the definition of streaming means is that something is coming down from the internet, a video that you're watching, you're only seeing a few seconds as it comes through your system and then goes right
Hey,
back
Chuck,
out.
can I interrupt, Chuck?
Sure.
So like my question is really around cost, because the first thing you said was people are saving, upwards of $170 a month in some cases.
Yep.
Right. So can you, this is very, I just want to know, can you get the cost down to 30 or 40 or 50 bucks a month for most people that also do, other things other than just watch the TV, right? So they might use the internet for business or whatever. Can it be down that low?
Yeah. So
And the reason, let me give you the follow-up question right away. The follow-up question is, not all the content's free. The content can be very expensive. And when you start like patching it together, it ends up being almost the same cost. You might save a little bit, but then you don't have the options. And so I still haven't seen a clear business case or cost case, return on investment that makes sense yet. I just want, if you could address that clearly, like for us.
Sure. So the first thing I'll unpack that. The first thing is that your internet costs and your cable costs are two separate things. They come to you from the same company. So you might have an internet bill of $70 to $100, depending on like what your plan is and what, whatever. But then you might also have direct TV. You might just have internet and then you might have direct TV. We're talking about eliminating the direct TV cost. We're talking about eliminating the Comcast cable TV cost, which is taxes, insurance. That will average between, $150 to $170 a month that people will save.
Okay, when I talked about cable, Chuck, I'm talking about for internet. Okay, I'm not talking, so you have a cable TV provider can provide. I know it's two separate
bills,
but most people get that. And the lowest cost I've been able to find is $100 using a cable provider, right? Otherwise you have to go through Dish. Some places you can go through a telephone provider, Verizon with fiber wire and all that. But yeah, I'm just trying to, I understand the difference, and I think a lot of us do. Some of us might not, but yeah.
So at the best way to look at it is the net output of money from your house each month will drop between $150 to $170 a month. Now, whether that is that's just the reality of it, of how much you're saving, because you're not renting or leasing equipment or paying taxes and insurance on equipment. So you're eliminating a lot of costs that are just fixed costs every month. You're correct about internet costs, but that's going to be there whether or not we're talking about, the net savings that will come from each household on every individual month. Now, you brought up an interesting point about when you're piecing together content that's very expensive. I actually, like, the most expensive thing that you could buy through streaming would be something like a month-to-month deal with, say, Fubo TV or YouTube TV. Now, what they're doing is that they're bundling everything up for you at, say, $65 a month or something like that. That's still a big savings. That's about half of what you'd save with cable. And YouTube TV and Fubo TV and Sling is another one. And I think that one's like $30, $40 a month or something like that. You're going to get more times 5 than what you have with cable, and it's still going to be a lot less. So pound for pound, you'd still select those options over the cable provider for obvious reasons. You're saving money and you're getting something better. But what we're trying to uncover and show people is that there is so much in terms of free that is out there that you don't need any of those things. You can get so many of the, they're called FAST, free ad-supported TV networks. I showed you Local Now. If we had gone through sort of the whole, somewhat of the reason why, even when I do an individual conversation, is that the whole presentation covers every single thing, and then you get to the end and you fill in the gaps with the questions. But we would have covered all of the different free platforms that are out there that make their money, because nothing really is free. They make their money with advertisement. So just like when we had an antenna on our roof, we didn't get free TV. It was charged to us via the time that we would have to devote to watch a Ford commercial or a Coca-Cola commercial. And that was how the media made money. Then when cable came along, they convinced us that we wouldn't have the commercial aspect anymore. And, we would pay for cable and have a subscription. But then what did they do? They charged us and they put commercials in. So it's one of those things that, understanding, you don't know what you don't know. All of the free stuff, the places that we leave, that's why we're up over $2 million in savings, is that, the answer is to get everything that you want. You might pay for a couple things, like Netflix is something to pay for. And there are a few things that, that you might want to have as a premium, but for the most part, it'll be not even close to what you're paying for cable.
Chuck, we're deep in the weeds here and internet and other things. One of the focuses today was the free content. Can we go back to that part of the presentation? And then if there's still questions, like there's questions about DVR and some other questions that are kind of like on the periphery of what we're talking about, can we go back to the presentation and learn about some of the channels? Like, this is the questions, how do I watch PBS? How do I watch WBZ? There's a lot of like, how do I watch questions. I think we should focus on that for our last, we've got about 9 minutes left here.
Yeah. So I think that it's important to sort of understand, the different things that are out there that are free. And, when people say, how do I watch something specific, like a CBS or what have you, and I'm trying to, think of like the best ways to kind of show, like Pluto TV is owned by CBS.
But let's give credit to Doug Baldwin.
But this is all free. And, basically what this,
on the kickoff. That sounds good.
Turn down the
Veteran receiver.
But like, this is hundreds of channels, all completely for free, that will have, MTV, VH1, the list goes on and on. There's so much content, it's impossible to cover it all, right? But, for the most part, this is live TV programming that's out there right now. It's called FAST, free ad-supported TV. Plymouth Rock TV, as we're on, in all over the world, in places like with whoops, I just switched to Hulu. I'll go to the Local Now platform again. But like when our channel is played, and we are seen in India or whatever else, a commercial for the Brewster House of Pizza doesn't come up. We're actually being seen, and they'll show commercials. So this is Plymouth Rock TV. We have a show called Golfing the World that is, we have PBS shows on our network, and this is a golfing show, part of our network here. We do touristy things, all this kind of stuff. These commercials run, that's how we get paid. We get paid just like we would if we were doing, if we were the Food Network and you were paying, as if you owned a restaurant, you were paying a PR firm to, get the word out about who you are and what you do. There is sort of a whole world of introduction that you would kind of want to be exposed to, that just comes with time, but it's a new mindset. It's a new way of thinking. And I'm going to cover as many of these things as I can. The DVR question I heard, I'm hearing these little things. These are the things that I hear all the time. A DVR is a term that is related to the old style of media. That's the most expensive appliance that you have in your house, because it's all storage and you're paying a ton for what it actually does. Keep in mind, the function of a DVR is that you are able to access content when you want. So if you go on YouTube as a institution is storing all that stuff for you in their cloud on their servers, and you can access it whenever you want. And so what's important is that you're now looking at things not from the sense of a recorder, but of access, and everything is up in the cloud. The only thing that where a DVR might come in handy is for your ability to pause live programming. And the only time that that really comes into play would be like live sports. So if you're watching the Patriots and you want to pause it and go in the other room and grab a snack and come back, some of these systems, they'll have they call it DVR, but it really isn't, because you're not recording anything. It's just basically allowing you to pause the stream, and then it is storing that stream a little bit. And you can pay for them individually, but it really is something like, and if I go back to that News On app that we have, and again, I'm doing this from my phone, but a lot of times I talk to folks and they record the news, which I think is funny. And then it just jams up their DVR player. Here, you have all of the news channels that are giving you the most up-to-date live news available to you. If I turn my phone a little bit here, and that is allowing you to sort of watch the most up-to-date news broadcast, but you can also watch from, news segments. Like if you wanted to just click on and just, watch the weather.
And a good Friday to you
forecast
on
or
me.
whatever
Just
would
said
happen
it's
to be.
given. Look at these
There's
temperatures
all
today,
sorts
making
of
a run.
ways that you can do it. And that's sort of the DVR function, if that makes sense, and, when it comes right down to it, for like Netflix or Plymouth Rock TV or whatever, our app it's all stored information. So when we have Newport Polo and New England Championship Wrestling, and we have Golfing the World and all of this content, this is all recorded for you, right there, and you use it at your disposal. And, and again, the app is a little bit different than, sort of the online show, but like the Livingston Taylor show we have here, you watch it and it's right there, and then you turn it off. You didn't have to record it, just like you wouldn't have to record anything on YouTube. But, we feel that the kind of programming that's going to emerge now from technology is going to be a lot of hyper-focused local kind of content that allows us to sort of show the world, like what we do, and and highlight New England. That's our platform, is that we highlight New England for the world to see. So, when we can stream events and all special things related to, New England and the region we're from, and people in, the Pacific Northwest and Canada and Mexico and Africa. And we have people from all over the world who enjoy the content here. And that, I'll throw it back to Dale for, other specific questions, but it's important to sort of understand that it's hard to, really, everyone's going to have different specific questions, because they're all going to have their own individual viewing habits. And we'll just stop the share here. So one person's, question is going to be different from somebody else's, but you want to custom design this to what you and your family enjoy. And that's what makes it great.
Thank you, Chuck. I think we're at the top of the hour here. This is great. I think the moral of the story, folks, is, and Jeff touched on this too, when you plug cable in, you kind of cruise through the channels, you click, 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 you get what they offer you. And it's kind of, that's the experience. When you get rid of the cable, you need internet, and internet on Cape Cod is expensive. I call like every year and see what they have going on. Right now I'm paying, so I can't get fiber through Open Cape. I'm not on 5G. I've got a pretty robust plan. I pay $60-70 a month, I think, with taxes. I call every once in a while and negotiate. I've got a Roku. When you use the Roku, you kind of have to it's not just one place. You're installing these different apps to kind of replace what your interests were with cable. Most of them are free. I pay for Disney Plus, and I pay for Netflix. So, and
let me interrupt you quick, Dale, because I think it's important to point out that this is happening whether or not, you get my help in the education or not. there are roads to go down based on lack of understanding. And with all due respect to Jeff, he went on it on his own, and you're gonna learn what you learn and what you discover. And there's a lot of stuff out there that can be traps in terms of paying for things that you don't need and whatever else. And so he did it the right way. I mean, he was cutting the cord on cable long before anybody else was. That, like I said, I get a lot of people like that who just have had in the past, streaming scenarios were harder because the technology wasn't quite there yet, and now the way that it's the perfect storm, everything is sort of come together. But this is all happening whether or not you access my services for questions. I'm not pitching streaming. I'm just telling you, this is what the future is. And you either know it or you're going to sort of go on, traverse that road on your own. And I think for some, they love the idea of having sort of that personal guidance. For others, they want to be innovators and trailblazers and be able to have, like, what we're doing at Plymouth Rock TV is extraordinarily huge in terms of I'm doing what Netflix does. We're the same. We're available just as many places as Netflix. We have the same technology. The only difference is our content is local. We're featuring stuff like you'd see on Chronicle and local programming. But I mean, we're like innovators that are insane. And I like the value of what we're doing is incredible, because people can't believe, like, oh, Netflix or Disney Plus. Yeah, their content is different. They have Marvel movies. We don't. Their production relationships that they have are a little bit more, in terms of the types of content that they have. Star Wars movies and premiere movies, that kind of thing. That's not what we're competing with. We want to show you, like My Fishing Cape Cod, and we want to show you the Phantom Gourmet and Evening Magazine and Chronicle and things like that. That's what we're trying to put out there, because local information, I think, is the most important stuff that we can provide. Even having stuff like this and being able to, we're doing all sorts of great stories with businesses on the Cape who are, doing some amazing things. And, whether it's tourism related, entrepreneur related, it's just, it's a fascinating world. And, we're so excited to be a part of it, but it's happening whether or not I'm not trying to convince you of anything. This is happening. These are these companies that are out there, and it's crazy.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Chuck. We're going to wrap it up here. We're at the top of the hour. Lots of information. There's some links also in the chat. Listings of channels. There's so much content out there. It's, you kind of have to pick and choose based on what you're trying to replace. Thank you for boiling it down, Chuck, and for returning.